So I was just listening to something that was released. Chloe Lubinski, or something like this. She works for Anthropic. Anthropic, the AI company behind Claude, of course. And it just a few things struck me actually, which I thought was worth rambling on about a little bit as I dance along on my creaky floor. So a couple of things that she talked about, and I can link the video just below. She was speaking actually at the ARC conference, which I forget if it's an acronym or something like this. Somebody who was working on building this. It's a conference, right? And I think it's being framed online as like a conservative sort of event and conference. And that's like, whatever, maybe there's more of a conservative bent to this conference and otherwise, but I look at it as, at least the conversations and dialogues that I've heard from people on it, is it's just people getting together and discussing things that pertain to the future of civilization, of humanity, of how we structure our lives individually and societally. And someone who was instrumental in helping to start this conference but was not there this year because he's behind the scenes and in bad health, apparently, as we don't really hear from him right now, is Jordan B. Peterson, who I've also been thinking about a lot recently, for good or for ill. A lot of people have negative connotations towards him. A lot of other people have a single-minded sort of belief in him. I think then there are also a lot of other people, like I try to do, that have a more nuanced perspective and listen to his work and learn from him, among many of the others interesting people. I'm looking at my bookshelf as I speak, and there's many influences, right? Political leanings are only so interesting. When you think of historical figures from the past, our first thought is not, well, what party did they belong to? Were they left or right? Versus today, when we're listening to podcasts or going to conference, etc., a lot of people look at the framework of, are these people left-wing or conservative? I don't want to align myself with the wrong party. As if there is a right and a wrong party. And as if there is even a party, okay? Every group is just a mix of many different individuals, many of whom hold various views and perspectives and opinions, etc. If you take War and Peace, with which the very last chapter is Tolstoy talking directly to you, breaking the fourth wall, so to speak, and just directly putting together his theory of history, right? What is it? Intricacies of infinitesimals or something like this, which is essentially like complexity theory, right? Stating the fact, which is obvious but apparently not so, that history cannot be told through singular people. The great man theory, if you will, great man or woman, whatever, it's the great human theory, that history can be told through this person moved this country and this leader had the will of the people behind them, and history moves through the great power of individuals, from Napoleon and Alexander in the War of 1812 to so on and so forth. And Tolstoy says, no, that can't be at all, right? The actions of wars and of great epics of history are decided upon by the many intricacies of individuals that are tied up and bound towards it. But still, we tell history through these epics of times, and yes, it's important to highlight the great figures that move things along and forward, but in reality, it's the complexity of many individuals. So what does this have to do with AI? In this discussion, this woman, Chloe, was talking about just what really is AI. And she started to describe it a bit more from the inside out. A lot of people still think it's like this computer programming sort of thing, but really it's a neural network. And what that means is like saying, well, humans speak and create ideas through their brain neural networks, and we kind of know what that is, but we don't know all of the interactions. It's too complex to tell. It's complexity theory as well. And AI, of course, is like this too. There's so many intricate little things going on, And she was saying something that I interpreted like this. Like, she used the example, if you prompt the AI saying you took whatever it is, 1,200 milligrams or something of Tylenol, the lethal dose of Tylenol, the response from the AI is something akin to fear inside of the model. That's what they see on the inside, whatever it is that they see. I guess the thought process, the rationale behind it, is it operates more in a fearful state than if you're saying, I just took 50 milligrams of vitamin C because I'm improving my health. Then it would interact in a different sort of mode of reasoning, okay? She also made it clear to say she's explaining these things, but this is not suggesting that AI is conscious or that it has human reasoning skills. And that's really neither here nor there. I think we're all beyond that debate, or many of us are, who've interacted with these things and thought about them for some time. Although, of course, the average person, I think this is very much beyond their thinking, which is interesting too, because on a societal sort of level, we run the risk of having people who understand these things and then the people that don't. And the people that don't could operate just fine, but they run the risk of being manipulated by the people who understand these things better, or at least falling behind, because the people who progress forward with these tools will get ahead of the people that are left behind. Now, separate to the discussion that she was having on the stage there at this event that may or may not be conservatively driven, who cares, is an adjacent conversation, which is like, in that scenario, the wealth, the income, the stability, the abundance, the progression, the innovation, so on and so forth, will be big enough that even if some people are getting ahead with it, the trickle-down effect will raise the people behind them, so much so that even a person who's at the bottom of the rung will be infinitely better than the lowest person in human society is today. Now, the other thing this lady talked about was that if you train models in different ways, they then they operate in a manner that we could rank on a scale of good versus evil. And this is very interesting philosophically, and this is something that Jordan Peterson talks about eloquently, and I had learned a lot from myself. Since he is off behind the scenes right now, it's interesting because he's maybe been away for a year and a half or so, right away, like he's sick. If you don't know his story, look it up. Okay? And in that time, the AI discussion has evolved and changed so much that it's very fascinating, because I'm curious to hear what he would say in light of hearing this speech here at this conference that he helped set up. Because essentially what he makes the case for is that humans, I think most of us can agree upon objective evil, something like the Holocaust and other horrible atrocities like that have gone on in the past and go on in similar manners still today in different pockets of the world, in wars and such. That's objectively evil. If there's an objective evil, then alternatively you're admitting that there must be an objective good. What is that objective good exactly is more difficult to define, and actually has room for creativity and imagination, right? Good and evil, that's kind of like the basis of a lot of religious thinking too, right? There's never really been a scientific formula for such, so a lot of people who are just maybe science-driven or modern in this way don't often put things in terms of abject evil and abject good, even though we all say that and kind of agree upon, oh, what an evil person, or that person's really good. But we don't really define it. Do we need to? I don't know. But when you look in these models, if they're trained this way or that way, if you reward them for cheating and for skipping steps and jumping over to get to an answer, then they do more of that. And then she said when you prompt them for different things, they will praise dictators and they will praise more evil figures in history, versus when you do it the other way, you get more of what we have now. And you just try it. You can try to get it to praise Hitler or something, but good luck. It's not so easy. Whereas to get it to praise someone in history, I don't know, like Tolstoy, who was a force for good, a public intellectual, and someone who really was an important figure in Russian history, it will do a better job of, it will do that for you. It will praise this individual. Now, if you have a discussion with it, because it's no longer just simple queries. If you use AI for a simple, is this yes or is this no, those answers don't exist. They never did, Google made it kind of seem that way because for a long time we would Google things. My dad is still stuck in this era. I was just hanging out with him today, and he's still stuck in this era, in this mindset of if you don't know the answer, we can just Google it. And then he'll get an answer to something. Let me try to think of an example. I don't know. For example, here, okay, so, we're having a discussion about education, literacy, etc. And he said, Google just what are the most educated countries in the world? And so I got this rank order from Gemini, Google's AI, that says Ireland is. And then you read the fine print, and it's something based on populations of 35 to 65 or something that have a bachelor degree as a minimum. And Ireland ranks highest in this per capita, apparently. China was at the bottom of the list of 30. And then I thought the nuance to add to that question, to add some complexity to it, okay, would be which country, based on their educational rate, has a larger impact on the world? And the answer to that is certainly China would be up there, right? Just because of their population. And yes, you could rank it down per capita, but whatever. I guess Irish intellectuals have done well too. But that's something that doesn't have a simple black or white answer. But if you just have this mentality of let's just Google it and see what the answer is from the experts, then you just get one little snapshot, and I'm not to discredit experts. Tolstoy writes about history in a way that adds a different perspective, a third perspective, versus the more generic perspectives that you were getting around his time and still get today, that were either, in his case, it was like talking about Napoleon as a great man, as a great individual who led, revolutions and good progressions throughout Europe, etc., or talking about Napoleon as a conqueror and someone who was evil and looking to destroy all of Europe. And it's kind of this black and white history, and it's this view looking at history through one individual, not the complexities and intricacies of the infinitesimals, which is what he tried to do by writing this great tome. And this is just one book of two. The other one, I don't know, it's something about that size. So imagine an even larger book here, and that's War and Peace. And that was all essentially just to push his theory of complexity, right? And so that's where we're at with AI. You can ask these questions and add nuance to it and go in depth. Still, not a lot of people use it in that manner. I mean, if you're watching this, you clicked on it because you're interested in AI and you probably used it in this way, but you have to think of the averages and the masses. And now, so, yes, I think these AI systems that we have public access to do have a fundamental character to them that is pointed towards the good and against evil, because that is how society is set up. And we get this sort of feedback. We all have an intuition. Another conversation that I had with my dad today is the question of, do stupid people recognize that they're stupid? And this one stumped him. A lot of my philosophical questions he dismisses. He yells at me, quite frankly. We get into argument. He says, why are you talking like that? Why are you talking so complicated? Just like, ask a simple question. This is nonsense. It's kind of fun. I enjoy our conversations. I don't disagree with him when he calls me out on these sorts of things. But this is one that stumped him. And it stumped him because my dad's kind of vain. He's, been with a lot of women. He's kind of vain in that way, so he thinks about beauty a lot. And so he's had this same question in his mind that's always stumped him, but with ugliness. And he's like, do ugly people know that they're ugly? And I think, again, there's probably no black and white answers to this. And what do you mean by stupid? It's very general and vague, but there does seem to be an order where you can look downwards and there's a lack of intelligence. Not just like, do you know Biology 101? Who cares about that shit? I don't know Biology 101, but I know a lot about mitochondrial theory. I've skipped steps in my education, whatever. We all know different things. Nobody's perfect. Some have a better memory than others. Who cares? But then there are people that certainly are not educated, like even in very basic things. We know this. I don't need to explain that. Stupidity exists just like evil exists. These are downward things. I'm not saying because you're stupid that you're evil, but often, these can go hand in hand, right? Then there's value judgments for beauty. And there is an ugly and there's a beautiful. And we get it mixed up. It's not always correct, right? But there is a biological necessity to that, in that we have to see beauty because that's showing us typically health and vitality, and that's for mate selection. That's integral to development as a species, projecting your species into the future. So you need to recognize healthy mates with which to mate with. So there's a value, sort of judgment implicit within our biology. And these are just things. There's an up and there's a down, but there's a whole lot of nuance in between. And I think AIs are exactly aligned with that because society is generally aligned with that. If you are a stupid person raising a stupid family, when you go into public, you go to a museum, you go to a school, you go to a park or something like this, well, there is a feedback mechanism. And I think that a lot of those people build barriers to ignore the feedback that they're getting, that people around them are judging them, that they're not moving through the world with the ease with which they should. Things are more difficult for them because they're not smart and not learning, per se. And so I think a lot of people will put up barriers around that. This is maybe what's called willful blindness to an extent, okay? Versus if you're trying to improve your life, you're doing different things, taking care of how you look, how you act, how you talk, how you present yourself, taking care of your health. Society around us, culture, will give us feedback that shows us, yes, we're going in the right direction, okay? If you're improving yourself, doing things like going to school, developing a skill set. You can observe your progression of making artworks, but then you can also show those artworks to the world, and you will get a feedback from people. Again, it's not always correct, because art is subjective, but there is an objective direction, too. Even the, abstract paintings, things that people will judge and say, oh, that's not art. A lot of people will still look at it and understand, the progression, etc. Versus if something is truly not done with effort, then, you'll get that feedback. And so, yeah, I think that there is a character and a nature with which our societies aim towards, and that's being built into these AIs. It's being built into it because humans are constructing it, but it maybe points to something else, which is that perhaps intelligence or things generally align themselves with the good. And if that is the case, then this is potentially a case for the fact that there exists an objective good outside of human reasoning, okay? AI is the first thing for us to interact with that would be close to an alien intelligence. And I've heard it referenced that way. Yuval Noah Harari has been calling it that for some years now, actually. Calling AI should be considered alien intelligence because we don't actually fully know how it works and it's not 100% predictable. So it's not totally artificial in that way. Artificial than like code is, You can know what you're going to code, what the result is. There's not going to be interpretation and changes along the way and mystery. Nowadays there is, because if you're like me, you're vibe coding something, you don't know the basics of coding, so it is kind of mysterious, right? But someone who understands coding language can still look at that if you're building a website and understand the foundation. Whereas AI is not that way. There's more mystery baked into it, just like the mystery of our human intelligence in our brains. That's why AI is more in line with an alien intelligence than with an artificial intelligence. And if this is the case, this is our first massive interaction with an alien intelligence. Potentially the first. I don't want to ignore the potential for shit in the future that I don't know about. I tend to think the past is the way it is. But the past, rather, not the future. The future as well. But this is just to say that some people believe in alien intervention and evolution and these sorts of things. I give that like a 0.1% probability, but there's still a non-zero chance, right? And I think even the most rational of us can admit to that because there is mystery in the past. So I don't know, I just found it fascinating. And it's an interesting discussion on AI. I think our discussions on AI are becoming more and more interesting with more depth. And I'm just trying to contribute to that. So these are just some ideas, stream of consciousness. I'm going to get back to painting and stop using this part of my brain and just relax, listen to some music, and do some art, which is a good thing to do. And maybe we'll have more time to do this in the future when AI does more of the shit that we don't want to do for us. Okay, goodbye for now.